Hey, my friends, it's Rich Lewis. I hope you're doing well today. So, today I'm finally getting back into the groove of things. I know it's been a couple of months since I posted my last video. Yes, we are still in a three-part series. This is part number 2 right here. But yes, I'm sorry it's been a minute since my last posting. Today is actually Father's Day, and I didn't plan it like this. It just happened to work out to where the topic we're talking about today connects with that. Obviously, if you can see my shirt right here, you see where it says Dads. This is actually my Dads with Beards Are Better shirt. It's one of my favorite shirts that my kids have gotten me throughout the years because obviously I'm a little biased when it comes to the facial hair side of things. But happy Father's Day to you and to all the fathers, all the men in your life. I hope you're having a great day today. So today is my latest installment of my Did You Know teaching series. I believe this is video number 18, and we're continuing the three-part series that I started a few months ago. This is part 2 today. We're studying the Christian doctrine of adoption. The series is entitled Adoption versus Identity, and like I said, we're finally in part 2. I call this one God's Kids versus Devil Kids, and so creative little name right there. I want to unpack for you what I mean by that. So let's go ahead and jump in and see what I'm talking about here, and hopefully this will bless you today. So God's kids versus devil kids. Did you know that the commonly held theological idea, particularly here in the Western Church in the U.S., there's this idea that there are essentially two kinds of people in the world, children of God and children of the devil. But did you know that we actually got this idea from taking something literal that was never meant to be taken literal? It was meant to be taken symbolic because it had a deeper metaphorical meaning to it. I have to admit, I didn't really know that before I jumped into this study that I did that led to this novel that I wrote. And so I'm so excited to share it with you today. So let's go ahead and kind of unpack what I'm talking about with that. So this concept, this idea actually comes from the misusage, the misunderstanding of what's called a Hebraic idiomatic phrase. Now, that's a mouthful, okay? So let's unpack what that means. By Hebraic, meaning Hebrew, meaning Jewish, okay? Idiomatic, that's connected to the word idiom, okay? Idioms, I didn't say idiot, by the way. We've got plenty of those. I tend to be one of those at times. I'm using the word idiom, okay? An idiom is a part of language, an actual part of speech, and every language has idioms. Now, these are meant to be symbolic in nature. They're metaphorical. They are not meant to be taken literal. And we know this because, as I mentioned a couple in just a second, you're going to be aware of. You're going to be like, yeah, Rich, why in the world would I ever take that literal? That was always meant to be metaphorical. To get a more technical understanding, kind of a sort of a definition of what an idiom is, this is a word or a phrase, usually it's a phrase, that we have borrowed, or actually it's become borrowed and repurposed from another language, so from one language to the next. And so if you dig up the origin of the word idiom, it's a Greek word that literally means it's something that you borrow and make your own. Okay, so that's the concept we're talking about here. So a couple of classic ones that we use in everyday English language would be such things as, well, I slept like a rock last night, or it's raining cats and dogs outside. Other ones like, don't spill the beans, or, oh, I got to do this before I kick the bucket. I did it by the skin of my teeth, or, hey, go break a leg. You and I both know we're not being literal. If I tell you I slept like a rock last night, you're not going to start freaking out and saying, Rich, oh my gosh, are you okay? What do you mean? What are you talking about? You metaphysically turned into a rock last night in your bed. Like, no, I didn't. I said I slept like a rock. Huh? You know what I mean by that. I slept like a rock means I slept hard like a rock. I slept deep. It was a restorative kind of sleep. That's what slept like a rock means. If it's raining outside and I tell you, man, it's raining cats and dogs out there, you're not going to run around like Chicken Little and freak out saying, oh my God, there's cats and dogs literally falling from the sky. No, there's not kitty cats and puppy dogs falling from the sky. You're saying it's raining heavy out there. Drops as big as animals. Raindrops are falling. Oh, yeah, it's raining heavy. I need to bring an extra umbrella, maybe a poncho, okay? That we all know what that means. And the other ones, like don't spill the beans. That's not talking about a literal bucket of beans. It's talking about keep the secret. Kick the bucket. You're not kicking a bucket. I just kick the bucket means to die and pass away by the skin of my teeth. It was a narrow escape. Hey, go break a leg. No, it means good luck. Okay, we all know that. Okay, I'm telling you something you already know. Well, the Jewish language, okay, Hebrew, And also Aramaic and Greek, they all had idioms as well. So I hope I've set the table for you. Let's do our little cultural exercise as well before we jump in to these references in Scripture that we got this idea from, erroneously from, by the way. Okay, so we're going to take off our cultural glasses, our current glasses. We're going to take those off, put them on the table, and we're going to pick up the glasses of the audience of Jesus' day who would have been listening to him talk about these different things that we're going to unpack. Okay, so remember, Western lens versus Eastern lens. Let's look at it through the Eastern lens right now. So where did this idea come from? Okay, there are actually 4 references. We'll probably do a 5th one too, but there's 4 more direct references that this idea came from. Jesus, John, and Paul are the ones where we get these references from. So there's 4 of them. You've got sons of the evil one, you've got your father the devil, you've got son of the devil, and you've got children of the devil. Okay, so what in the world are the people talking about with this? So let's go with the first reference here. Sons of the evil one. This is actually traced back to the book of Matthew, chapter 13. And it is in this parable, this story that Jesus is telling. It's often referred to as the parable of the wheat and the tares, okay? Or if you want to use a modern day language, the wheat versus the weeds, all right? So here he is in this parable. Remember, parables are symbolic stories, and they have deeper meanings packed into them that you're trying to communicate to the audience. So Jesus is calling the tares, okay? They were a type of weed that grew next to the wheat whenever they would have them, they'd grow in their fields. He was referring to the tares in the story as the sons of the evil one. Well, who's the evil one? Well, he's referencing the devil, okay? Or he also, I think he used some translations say people of the evil one. Well, what he's talking about here, he's referring to they practice evil just like the evil one practices evil. So, that's very interesting. Now, let's go a little bit further. The wheats and the tares, if you want to dig into this, they actually looked very similar to each other. But you could not pull the tares, like you couldn't go in there and pluck up the tares, because if you plucked them up, you might accidentally pluck up good wheat as well. The reason why is because they look very similar when they're growing. You have to let them get to a fuller maturity before you start seeing the differences, like, oh, this is wheat right here, and this is a tare right here, okay? The point that Jesus was trying to make in this parable, in my opinion, is that many people are fooled by a form of religiosity, okay? It looks real, it kind of feels sort of real, but the more that you look at it, eventually you see it was masquerading as true spirituality. It wasn't genuine. Okay, and he's calling out the Pharisees. Hello, more epic battles with Jesus and the Pharisees. He's comparing the Pharisees to the tares. He's like, you look like wheat, you kind of sound like wheat, but you act like tares. And so, they did not like that. He was not literally saying that they are sons of the evil one, sons of the devil. He was just saying, you need to remember who your real daddy is. Okay, you have forgotten. It's a character issue with you guys. He was calling them out. Now, it's also interesting, and these are just some little scientific facts going on right here to kind of connect to it. So one of the reasons why the Jews didn't like the tares, why they would eventually pluck them, pull them away from the wheat, is because you could make bread with the tares. You could make bread with them just like you could with the wheat, but it tasted bad. It had a bitter taste to it. It was kind of an acidic taste. It didn't taste very good. Now, ironically enough, the tares were great for bird food. Okay, birds loved eating the tares. So what they would do when they would harvest it all, they'd put the tares in a burn pile over here. Obviously, the birds would come and eat what they wanted to eat, but also you would burn the tares and turn it into fertilizer so you could refertilize the ground. Okay, so you're using everything. Nothing is wasted. The tares, if you want to look up the actual plant that is, it's what you would call the Lolium temulentum plant. I probably would not do a good job spelling that. I think I've got it misspelled in my notes right here, but you can look it up sometime. The Lolium temulentum plant. It actually has medicinal values to it. So it may taste terrible in bread, but it has value that science has shown us that it's great for pain relief and such things like migraine headaches, nerve pain, muscle pain, joint pain, like if you have arthritis and rheumatism, sciatica, even toothaches. Even it can help with preventing nosebleeds. So once again, nothing is wasted here, and it wasn't Jesus being literal. He was just saying it's a character thing, okay? Know what your identity is. So that's the first reference, the sons of the evil one. The next reference is your father, the devil. Okay, so you find this one in John, in the book of John, the Gospel of John, chapter 8. And Jesus, once again, he's calling out the Pharisees directly. He's doing the same thing. He's not saying you're literal devil kids. He's like, you're acting like them. And and specifically here, he's talking about their valuing of, they would rather value to tell a lie than tell the truth. Okay, so he's talking about truth versus lies here. And he's challenging them. He's like, wait a minute, hold on a second. The whole point is here, you need to stop valuing lies over truth. You know what the truth is, and you're purposely deceiving the people around you. That is a no-no, an absolute no-no. Sorry, my alarm was going off on my phone over here. I forgot to set that off. Okay, so his whole point here is you need to know who your true father is. God is your father, and as God is the God of truth, and he values truth, you need to value truth. And if you're not valuing truth and you're valuing lies and you're okay with purposely deceiving people, you're acting just like your father, Satan. In other words, you're acting as if you're one of his kids, but you're not one of his kids because Satan does not have the ability to create. I mean, he creates all kind of chaos, but he can't create us. God created us. We came from him. We're the genos of Theos, as my previous video talks about. Go back and watch it again if you need a reminder. We've got to know our identity. There's so much power. If you believe something that you're not, you're going to act like something that you're not. We were never intended to act like that. We were always intended to know what our identity is and value the truth of what that identity is. So, reference number 3, son of the devil. Where did this come from? Acts 13. This is where Paul, the Apostle Paul, he wrote like half the New Testament. This is where Paul, he's in Antioch. Actually, it's Paul and his friend Barnabas. They're in Antioch. And a little bit of trivia, that was actually the place where Christians were first called Christians. Antioch is a city in the modern-day Syria. And this is where Paul is confronting this Jewish false prophet, I'm probably mispronouncing it, Elymas, I think that's how you say it. And this guy was, Paul's referring to him as a magician, a type of sorcerer. And he's messing with Paul and Barnabas. And so Paul calls him a son of the devil. He acts in true Jesus form right here. He pulls a Jesus move on him and calls him out, just like Jesus did the Pharisees, because he was trying to mess with what Paul and Barnabas, he was basically a heckler. He was basically trying to deceive the people. Like, don't believe anything these guys say. And Paul confronted him directly and called him, you son of the devil. Almost like a cuss word kind of thing to it. He didn't like that, obviously, but that was the reference here. Paul was not being literal. Once again, it was an idiom, okay? This is a Jewish idiom right here. Everyone would have known what he was doing. They would not have taken it literal. They would have understood the symbolic meaning behind it, meaning wake up to the reality of who you are. The fourth reference is the reference of children of the devil. Now, this comes from 1 John. If you go to chapter 3, you're going to find this there. And John is doing the same thing that the other ones were doing, where he's using this idiom to connect with his audience. In verse 10, he says, this is how we know who the children of God are and who the children of the devil are. Anyone who does not do what is right is not God's child, nor is anyone who does not love their brother or sister. Okay, so what's he talking about? He's not being literal, guys, because I'll tell you right now, I totally say that I'm a child of God. I totally believe it. I've become awakened to that reality, been trying to live like that for over 40 years of my life, okay? I came to this awareness when I was a little boy, but there's still been some times where I haven't done the right thing. So do all of a sudden I stop becoming a child of God? Of course not. John is directly connecting what he's saying, this idiom right here. He's trying to remind people this is your identity. Know who you are. Act like the person that you know who you are. When we mistreat people, when we're mistreating others, we are forgetting who we are, or perhaps we never knew who we were. So he's awakening us once again to this reality. It's talking about two different kinds of mindsets here. He's not talking about origin, okay, like the origin of where you come from. He is talking about two different mindsets. Kind of sounds similar to what Jesus was saying, is valuing truth versus valuing a lie. So he's talking about character. All of the writers here are addressing the character of the person, what is fueling who you are. So this whole letter right here, 1 John, it's about learning how to practice love with one another. Love is the key, and obviously that was the entire message of Jesus right there. Now, I mentioned a second ago that there's a possible fifth reference that we could throw in here, okay? So this fifth reference is not a direct reference. It's not a direct use of an idiom right here, but sometimes it's used to try and strengthen that argument of, God's kids versus devil kids. And so you'll find it in the Gospel of John again, okay, so we'll go back to that. And it's in chapter 1. And it talks about this idea of becoming a child of God. Okay, to those that Jesus is saying that to those that gave the power to become the children of God. That's a little misleading though. Okay, because the word here is ginome. Okay, ginome. It's a Greek word, and it's translated as become. And in all honesty, it can mean that, but it's got some other things going on. It's not a perfect one-for-one translation of one word to the next. Okay, so it has this idea of becoming. Okay, but what is that exactly? Is how's that being like? Are you becoming something that you never were? That's how a lot of people have interpreted that. But there's also plenty of them that make great points of like it's more of an awareness thing because see, ginome is directly connected to another Greek word called ginosko. Gnosko means to know something, means to know something intimately. In fact, it's the Greek equivalent to the Hebrew word yada. Okay, yada means it's the word that's used metaphorically to describe this intimate knowledge of knowing who God is, and gnosko is the Greek equivalent for that. So we're saying the same message here in the Old Testament and the New Testament. It was also in Hebrew. It was used to describe the intimate knowledge that husbands and wives knew of each other, whether they knew it intimately emotionally or even as a sexual euphemism. Okay, talking about the sexual act of coming together. And so, gnosko and ginomai are coming from that same root system of knowledge and awareness. And so I would make the argument, and it makes such a more logical argument here, that the idea of becoming a child of God, really what the author was saying in the book of John right there, he's saying becoming aware of the reality of who you are. You're not becoming something that you weren't already. That doesn't make sense, especially if you watch the previous video and here's Paul saying we're the genos of Theos, we're the offspring of God, we're his children. Okay, and also another thing too, if you look at the parable of the lost sons video that I did as well a few months back, that was talking about the parable of the prodigal son. Both of the sons, there was never a time where they had to become the sons of the father. Jesus referenced them as sons the entire time, but neither one of them were living like it. They were both, in my opinion, just as lost, just lost in different ways. But that young one, he says, he came to his senses. That kind of sounds like to me he became aware. He's like, wait a minute, I'm out here pig farming. Oh my gosh, even the servants in my father's house have a better setup than I do, and I'm one of his sons. I think that's what this John 1 thing is referencing. Becoming one of God's kids. It's not becoming something that you weren't. It's becoming aware. The power of the knowledge here. Sometimes I like to tie this in to the psychological discussion of the nature versus nurture debate. And nature versus nurture, if you ever do any research on that, it's this classic idea of what are the most influential factors in the development of who we are as human beings. Okay, is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it genetics or is it environmental shaping? Okay, and I don't think I can lean to either one of those too far. I think it's a blend of both of those. I think they're equally powerful in influencing who we develop as human beings. I don't believe they're deterministic. In other words, because you were born a certain way that you've got to live your life out this way, or because you had a certain upbringing with the environmental shaping side and your family of origin that you have to live life a certain way. No, I really do believe in the power of changing your thought patterns, and I think this goes hand in hand with what Jesus has always said. We can change the course of the direction of our life, but we have to change how we're seeing ourselves, how we're perceiving ourselves and others and our situations and all the above. That's the power of changing your thought patterns. Romans 12, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, the renewing of your thought patterns. Okay, so all that said, I'll read you directly some of my thoughts here because I put a lot of thought into this. Really, what it is, the nature of the reality of the situation, it's our nature to be God's kids. He created us this way. But nurture-wise, we've been shaped by the enemy. Okay, we've been shaped by this fallen world that we're in, and it's been a powerful influencer on us. And I believe that it has made us forget who we really are. So we're having to learn who God is. It's a relearning of who we are and what our true identity is. And it is also equally an unlearning of what we're not. Okay? We've been deceived. That's what sin has done. Sin has put this blinder over us. And so when you start becoming aware of who you are and who God is and how much God loves you and how you're his kids and you always were, man, that's powerful. That's where you get to the place where you're like, wait a minute, I'm not a devil kid. Even though I've acted like it, and I do have a tendency at times to act like it because, I mean, that's how I've been shaped. But no, I have to become awakened to the reality that my identity has always been child of God. And when I start to see that, oh my gosh, it changes everything. We do have a tendency to sin. We do. Society shapes us, and experience shapes us. But we have to become aware of all of these things going on so that we can unlearn these things that have blinded us from seeing the truth of who God is and how He sees us. The goal, ultimately, seeing ourselves through His eyes. I hope that blesses you today, guys. I hope that you've learned something. I hope I've challenged you on things. If you have comments or questions about that, let me know. If this has been beneficial, please share it with others. And until the last heart is won, I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.